How can we as a society distribute our resources fairly and sustainably so that all people can live in peace and abundance? I think that our society is doing a pretty poor job at answering this question. Now, if you can't tell from the drab black and white slides with math on them, I am an economics student. I decided to get a degree in economics because I wanted to answer this fundamental question. And one would think that answering it requires input from people with diverse backgrounds and perspectives. And yet, all of the economics classes that I've ever taken have been remarkably non-diverse. And unfortunately, that's the case from the undergraduate level through to policymakers. So while Black and Hispanic communities experience higher rates of unemployment compared to white ones, and women earn just 83% on average compared to men, just a quarter of all economists at the Federal Reserve are women, and just 1 out of 447 is a Black woman. The lack of inclusion starts at universities, where Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous faculty make up just 7.3% of faculty in economics departments across the US. Economists of color are less likely to be cited in research, and women are greatly underrepresented in the field. And the lack of inclusion goes further when it comes to including knowledge from other disciplines. Economists are the least likely of any social scientist to cite from journals outside their field. And that makes sense, since 77% of graduate students from elite econ programs believe that economics is the most scientific of all the social sciences. Within the field, citations are predominantly to a handful of journals closely aligned with the leading schools. Promotion and securing tenure at many places is intricately linked with being published in these prestigious journals, reinforcing ideological conformity and a lack of diversity. So what we're left with is a system that discourages diversity in economics. And that can be detrimental to communities that are most impacted by economic policy and research. For example, if you think that employers should be required to provide health insurance to all employees, that people should be taxed according to what they can pay, or that trade should be contingent on how fairly workers are treated, then research shows that you are more likely to agree with women economists. And if you think more research should be done on the racial wealth gap, or why many workers of color earn less on average than white workers in the same job with the same qualifications, then you should not expect it from the current field, which only mentions racism 1% of the time in all research articles. So economics needs to become more diverse because we are not doing as well as we could be in addressing key issues. So, what's the solution? Well, I can only speak from the perspective of a student. And from my perspective, the basic economic lessons that we are taught need updating so that we can create a more inclusive field that serves everyone. How we educate people is crucial for shaping their perspectives and values. Our parents, teachers, professors routinely teach us what to value and what not to value. And when you're teaching people how to decide what to produce, for whom, and how to distribute it, it matters a lot what or who those decision makers are taught to value. Economist Paul Samuelson once said, "I don't care who writes a nation's laws or crafts its advanced treaties as long as I can write its economics textbooks." Samuelson implicitly understood that economics, a discipline claiming to describe the natural way by which our world ascribes value to people, time, and resources, is actually shaping what we value. In other words, economics is not seeing the objective, infallible truths of our world. Economics is telling us to see what it considers the objective and infallible truths to be. Allow me to illustrate. The mainstream economics that is taught today to almost all students and future policymakers is rooted in just 2 out of dozens of schools of thought. These rely on assumptions that Adam Smith, a wealthy Scotsman, wrote in 1776. Now, fair warning, we are going back to Econ 101. So if you've never taken it, welcome. If you have, I'm so sorry, but don't worry, this won't take long. The primary lesson in economics is scarcity. What scarcity means is that our needs and wants are always greater than the resources available, and we have to make choices about how to use them. In other words, we don't have enough of everything to make everyone happy. Now, sure, there's only so much gold or only so much oil in the world, and we probably can't all drive a Lamborghini. Fair enough. But the assumptions that human nature is intrinsically insatiable, or that we don't have enough for all to thrive, are fundamentally incompatible with many non-Western ways of life. Yet not once do I remember critically engaging with alternative economic perspectives in the 6 years that I've been taking economics classes. And that's a problem. Indigenous and feminist economies believe in our ability to take care of everyone, and that seeing resources as scarce is a choice. And it is a choice. Sociologists, political scientists, environmental scientists all tell us that the main issues that we face today are distributional challenges, not issues of scarcity or technology. The earth provides us with enough for all to thrive. For example, one might see water scarcity as the primary issue in the depletion of the Colorado River basin, because there isn't enough water to accommodate the demands of all the river users. Somebody might just as easily flip that script to say that government agencies, agricultural corporations, and urban developers emphasize the lack or the scarcity of money in development to justify short-term gain over long-term sustainability. So while economics claims to be describing our world, it's actually shaping it. Research actually shows that when we view resources as scarce, it activates the fear center of our brains, making us less empathetic and more individualistic. That fear entices us to consume and compete, which is good for industry because it drives demand and innovation for them. And while the theory that I was taught told me that this was a good thing, anybody who understands the history of racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination will know that not everybody is consuming or competing equally. To the Navajo and the Hopi tribes, market competition and a drive for consumption have meant the theft of their land and resources. To many low-income and Black communities in Mississippi, it has meant deadly pollution. And to many people in the Global South, it has meant labor exploitation of their children. Under scarcity, it is by definition impossible for us all to thrive. And marginalized students know who that theory is most likely to harm. But in economics, we are still taught to treat all things equal, assuming racism doesn't exist and the world is perfect. But the reality is that by ignoring the history that impacts students from marginalized backgrounds, we make the economics classroom an unwelcome space. So it is no surprise that economics as a discipline lacks diversity. But it serves as the basis for policy and influences the world's most powerful decision makers. Now, don't get me wrong. I love economics. And I'm not here to tell you that it's a useless discipline. Far from it. There's fantastic research coming out on everything from the racial wealth gap to sustainability and the minimum wage. My own environmental economics professor routinely reminds us of the equity implications and the shortcomings of the models we learn, which I really appreciate. But that shouldn't be reserved for the advanced classes. Professors at my own university are trying to diversify the department, and I'm just trying to help them from a student's perspective. If our intention is to create or to educate a diverse class of people with the necessary tools to help all people, then economics needs to be open to change. We need to make more space early on in economics education for students to critically engage with and challenge economic models, to explore what aligns with their lived experiences, and to discuss how all ideas are theorized in a certain context. Ideas are not just powerful because they are true. Ideas are made to be true because they are powerful. More concretely, theories and syllabi should not solely rely on Euro-American theorists from before 1950. I mean, come on. Readings and lecturers from other disciplines should be included at the earliest levels of economics education to highlight the interconnectedness with politics, history, ethics, and sustainability. Economics departments should be attempting to diversify their faculty and staff, and opposing viewpoints to the status quo should actually be taught and not simply dismissed. Because different perspectives and backgrounds in economics will enrich economic discourse, creating more equitable outcomes for everybody. Now, thankfully, there is a long list of people dedicated to this work, and I am by far not the first person to be calling for a change in economics. Nonprofits like the Sadie Collective advocate for Black women in the field, and professors around the country dedicate entire courses to non-mainstream form of economics. Unfortunately, they are in the minority, though. The field as a whole lags behind and remains limited in what it teaches. Young people deserve a greater wealth of tools, and we all deserve better policy. So if we want to make an economics that is more inclusive and serves everyone, then it has to be more open to diverse forms of thought and self-reflection. The only question is, are we going to continue to tie our hands behind our backs or open our eyes to the possibilities of healing and abundance? Thank you.